Okay, we're here today to talk a little bit about the National Identification System, which is something that I've been working with for several years now. In general, the system is designed to track animals, specifically beef animals, as they move through the supply chain so that we can tell where they've come from, where they've been, and hopefully if there were any type of disease outbreak, that could be traced back very quickly to the animal's origin. This would allow us to contain any disease outbreaks, hopefully. This really started with the first case of mad cow disease, approximately 2002, 2003. People started to become very interested in where these animals were coming from, mainly because this was the first widely publicized disease that could also be deadly for humans. But industries like the beef industry are typically not technologically advanced. They just haven't needed to be. So when pressure comes along for industries like the beef industry to significantly upgrade their technological capabilities, you have what's called really a technological diffusion. That is, pressure comes to integrate new models of business, new technology, specifically computer technology, into a business that is not used to using these types of tools. And what happens is that it takes time for these new tools to filter through an industry, and sometimes they're accepted and sometimes they are rejected. A large part of that depends on the people involved and the communication networks that control information. Now, in the case of the beef industry, a non-technical industry, communication networks are even more important than they would be in a more technical industry. We've all had experience with this sort of thing. If you get a free disc, some years ago, America Online was sending people lots of CDs in the mail, and they'd send with it a brochure that was supposed to explain everything about America Online, how it worked, what you needed to do, the advantages, right? And the first thing we all do is we throw the brochure in the trash and we call a friend and say, what about this America Online thing? That's how we typically get information about technology. An industry like the beef industry is no different at all. People turn to trusted contacts, friends, business partners, even competitors a lot of the time before they will official sources of information such as the USDA in this case. And the USDA has spent a lot of time and money pushing for animal identification, but it has not been accepted. Part of that is because of the communication networks within the beef industry, which have been largely ignored by the USDA, and part of it is because of the technology itself. Now, what you get in these industries, instead of a direct route from information providers to those who need it, in this case, you've got a huge gap between the USDA and, say, someone in rural Missouri who has 50 cows on some land somewhere. Now, the USDA puts this information about animal ID on a website. Chances are the person with these 50 cows has never been on the internet and doesn't want to be, ever. So it makes it very difficult for communication to take place. But eventually this filters down to this person with 50 cattle. And he starts to ask about it. Does he call the USDA? No. He calls a friend, a relative, a provider, someone that he trusts within the industry. So what you get are these chains of information that almost look like rivers. They bounce from the USDA to one person to the next, to the next, to the next, all the while being augmented and changed as they flow down that information path, until eventually it gets to our person in rural Missouri. Now, what he gets is not what the USDA wanted him to hear necessarily. It may be, but it may not. He's certainly going to get opinions from all of those people along the way a lot of whom probably do not agree with the USDA's take on animal identification for any number of reasons. I've had people tell me that animal ID is a plot conceived of by the IRS. I've had people tell me it's plain un-American. And there's, these things get hysterical. People are often convinced that the USDA wants to tag their cat or their pigeon. And these things just aren't true, and they never were. But even with all the hysteria, there were a lot of people who were willing to support animal identification. McDonald's, Walmart, people like this were very interested in adding credibility to their beef products. So they were not afraid to side with the USDA to support this, and even to offer money for cattle who could cattle that could be identified and traced. That money did not have a lot of effect. There were a lot of people who still did not understand the process. Now, the problem with any type of diffusion of technology through an industry, especially an industry that's not typically a technological industry, is that it becomes a very social process. It's not strictly a matter of putting the information out there, the benefits about a system, a new method of business, new technology. You can't just make it available and expect it to be accepted on a wide scale, especially when you're in unfamiliar territory. So within the beef industry, you have really powerful groups, such as the Livestock Marketing Association or the NCBA, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. They're associations, they're industry alliances, but they function almost like unions. And so this is where a lot of people are going to get their information about animal identification. And those unions, those associations, when they don't agree with the USDA, they let their membership know about it. And they are a lot better at being in touch with our 50 cattle operator, producer, small producer in Missouri than the USDA is. So this information then gets warped over time and becomes difficult to get those people at the ground level to buy into this because of this social process that is largely out of control of an information provider like the USDA. Now, had they identified those social networks, those communication networks, who's talking to whom, when, about what, before they started this process and used those chains, that river that I described earlier, to control this flow of information and get it to the right people, the change agents within the network, within the industry, then they could have had a lot, in my opinion, they could have had a much better response to this from the start. And in the future, this same process will continue to repeat itself in other industries. As technology continues to outpace our understanding of it, we'll all go through this in certain ways over time. Different industries, even more technical industries, will face the same challenges, and the people who are providing the information and the new technologies really need to be aware of this process, this technology diffusion as a social process, if they want to be successful in promoting new technologies and ways of doing business.